What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 404. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
And John.
Guys. How you doing? How's
Pretty
how's
good.
life?
Steve, I know you like these palindrome episodes. Whenever we have a palindrome number,
I love it. You know me so well. I was going to say it. You beat me to the punch.
That's all right.
I appreciate you for appreciating me. Yeah, they're fun. So what we got going on today? We got John's pick from last week for required viewing, which is 2005? Yeah, 2005's Red Eye, Wes Craven.
Cillian Murphy's proudest work that he's ever done.
Well, until the Oscars, I guess.
Oh, right. Until the Oscars will be his next most proudest appearance.
Right. And then we'll get into some other stuff. We finally did get together, like I mentioned last time, to watch a movie at Ronald's awesome in-home theater setup.
Thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thank you for having us. So we'll talk about that briefly. Cool. And then some other things that we may have watched. I don't know if anything gets mentioned. We'll throw it in there. But unfortunately, Ronald wasn't able to make it to the Dune 2 screening or Dune Part 2 screening. So I think
Stood us up.
He's gonna.
Yeah, I felt like as soon as it got right to the last moment, I was just like, I'm cowarding out of this damn movie.
The pressure was just the anticipation. It just killed you. Yeah, you couldn't do it.
The spectacle scared me.
It was the horrible prospect of hanging out with us 2 days in a row.
That's what it was. It was like, that's a little bit too much, guys. We pushed it.
Yeah. Think of it. This plan sounded good.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in the most general terms at the end of the episode. Ronald's gonna go off mute us or something. So we don't have any impact on him being able to view this movie when it comes out.
My nerves are bad. That's what it is. That's all.
I got you. I can respect it. I understand. So yeah, let's get into it. John, you want to take it and remind us why you picked Red Eye?
Well, I mean, this was back months ago. I just started keeping a list of movies I wanted to watch, or that someone mentioned that sounded interesting, or that I could remember that I had never seen that seemed like they were touchstones. And I just had this running list, and I especially tried to get some more recent movies on the list. Because a lot of my picks tend to come, as far as things I'm interested in filling in blanks, a lot of that stuff comes from the 70s or before. So it's like, well, what's something more recent that I have that feeling about? And I thought of this film, Red Eye. I'm a Wes Craven fan, or even more so, I'm a fan of sort of like the legacy of Wes Craven in a strange way. Like I like his sort of spot as a horror director that kind of crossed over, but then kept kind of coming back to the genre. And even if his movies can be kind of schlocky sometimes, I like that he always has something on his mind. And I had heard this movie was super fun. The stars, you really can't beat Rachel McAdams or Cillian Murphy, especially even today. Cillian Murphy is a bigger star than ever. I think Rachel McAdams is one of those people that everybody sort of loves, even if she's not always in some like big tentpole films or anything. But she's done her time in Marvel stuff, and she's in Game Night, which is a favorite movie of mine. So yeah, I expected I would like this movie. And then I put it on the list. And then right when it was coming around to the week that I would have said, hey, this is my turn, and I'm going to mention Red Eye. It was the same week that Cillian Murphy started like going in interviews, like talking shit about this movie, saying it was a B movie, one of the worst movies he's made. I think it's because he's got the press, right now he's doing for Oppenheimer. But I don't know. It just reminded me of a time when Cillian Murphy was this new young star. I believe he did Scarecrow before this, right? He was in Batman Begins before this. That seems right.
I don't know, actually. Batman Begins,
because I feel like the trailer says from
starring,
like mentions that he was in the Batman movie. Anyway,
they're the same year, but I don't remember which one came out first.
Well, either way, it was that kind of early role, and like I remember the trailer for this. I remember the sort of hype around it, and I also, when I see a movie that I might watch for this show with you guys, when I see that it's like under 90 minutes long, I get so excited. So because I knew you guys, even if you didn't like this movie, you'd consider it to be a low effort watch. I just thought it would be fun to finally see it, and also then suddenly I had the moment of, well, I don't even think Cillian Murphy likes this movie. Why would he not like this? Why is he too big for his britches now? So yeah, I was kind of curious, because what happened around that was I saw lots of people online sharing that story, and some movie buff friends of mine were saying, oh, well, what's he saying? This is a fun movie. And other people were saying,
Right.
oh, we went to see it and we laughed at it, and the whole audience thought it was so lame. We laughed at so many things. So there were all these little conflicting thoughts going through my head. So that was why I chose Red Eye. Before I get into my feelings about it, though, you had already seen it, right, Steve?
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you, Ronald? Had you already seen Red Eye?
I remember the trailer, but I don't think I did after watching it. I realized
Mhm.
that no, I hadn't seen it at all.
So
Wow.
what was your pre-existing feeling about this movie, Steve?
You mean having seen it already? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I just always remembered really liking this movie a lot. I remember
Mhm.
like where coming out of college, that time, like I was still working at the marketing company for the movie studios. So this
Mhm.
was a movie I remember like the whole campaign for, and working on this movie and seeing the advanced screening for this movie. And again, like you mentioned, like this is around the time when Rachel McAdams was arguably like kind of peak Rachel McAdams,
Yes.
like Notebook, Wedding Crashers, 1-2 punch, like what, or reverse them actually, Wedding Crashers, no, Notebook, Wedding Crashers. So yeah, it was like there was a lot around this movie of also just being another Wes Craven film. Yeah, Cillian Murphy, I did look it up. It was like 5 months or 3 or 4 months after Batman Begins came out. So I
Okay.
mean, there was a lot of kind of like just spinning around like hot people at the moment, just like in the industry.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I kind of went into it. I mentioned in the last episode. I remember seeing the trailer and like kind of playing up how the first, you know, 15, 20 minutes of the movie or whatever, probably less than that,
Yeah,
really
not even.
plays like pretty straightforward as like a rom-com meet cute kind of thing. And then kind of just once the wheels go up, the tone shifts pretty quickly.
The wheels come off. Once the wheels go up, the
Yeah,
wheels
there you
come off.
go.
Uh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I just remember seeing the screenings and everything. I may have even seen it multiple times. I think it may have been like a movie they screened a couple times, and just really liking it a lot. Just a very effective, efficient, short, quick. Does what it's trying to do, um, really well. I thought, and again, I
Mhm.
really like Brian Cox in it. Jayma Mays at that time was somebody that people were seeing around a lot, like from Glee and everything. So a lot of faces that you recognize. But yeah, I've always been a really big fan of Red Eye, and rewatching it, especially with Killian kind of getting the attention that he's an amazing actor. Um, so it's kind of cool that he's having a moment now, and even even in the context of him bringing up, like you mentioned, it kind of blows my mind. But because I think he's really fun and good in the movie too. It's weird
Yeah.
to me that he would feel that way about it, um, yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it.
And I think that like this movie does makes good use of both of their kind of whatever you call that star quality, that type.
Yeah,
It makes good use of her ultimate solid girl next door. She's a good person kind of vibe
yeah,
that she gives off. And I think it makes really good use of his creep factor, the sort of like weird thing in his eyes. Like I think he's a great actor. I think he's very charming. I think he's a good looking guy, but there's something he
yeah,
can do that is kind of alien and kind of weird. And honestly, the most fun part of the movie for me is that maybe the first 15 minutes into like the first 20-25 minutes when the turn really starts to happen, I feel like the back and forth, them just talking on the plane, I like scenes that unfold like that are kind of long. And that notion, it almost makes me nervous to think about that notion being on either side of a conversation where it starts off nice and then at some
yeah,
point it turns. That always gets me. And the way the person reacts to how, like, when you're in this kind of movie and a person realizes they've been played or they've been manipulated or the person's been, pretending to just meet them as a stranger, but actually there's a plan. She plays that really well, and I think they do a good job of jacking all that tension up by saying, "Oh, not only that, but she had a big stiff drink before she got on the plane, so she's a little woozy, and she's hemmed in. She's kind of trapped in because she's got the window seat and he's got the aisle seat. So there's just a lot of reasons
yeah,
why what could be a very kind of silly situation spirals out of control in an interesting way. And again, I think the fact that this type of movie, could easily be 2 hours and 20 minutes long rather than an hour and 20 minutes long.
right,
There's that extra hour of stuff that I was so glad we didn't have to deal with. However, it did make this movie seem like so stripped down part of me even wonders like why we don't see more movies that let the stakes stay somewhat small, even though this
Small,
movie
yeah,
goes
smaller.
a little wacky. But I think that like you said, Steve, a kind of clean storyline, even if you're picking apart the logic of it just a little bit, there's not
Yeah.
enough crazy moving parts, and it doesn't stretch out to the point where that's the game you're playing. You're more enjoying the back and forth. I love that he gets this throat injury and then has to go when he's talking, which means that earlier in the movie we got all of his cool dialogue, you know, and then later in the
Yeah.
movie he's like comedic. I mean, I don't know. I feel like for him to say this is a schlocky B movie and not also say there's something kind of knowing about it and something kind of fun about the silliness of it. So yeah, if this movie had been 2 hours, I might not feel this way, but I really did think kind of similar to what you're saying, Steve. It was just it's a brisk, fun, stripped down movie that does have some chops, does have some technique. I looked and saw who the cinematographer was, and it's a guy named Robert Yeoman, who I was like, oh, it was pretty well shot. What else has he done? He's done a ton of beautiful movies. He shot a bunch of Wes Anderson stuff.
Wow.
Some Noah Baumbach, one Kevin Smith movie. I won't hold that against him though. So anyway, it's just I think that it's Wes Craven directing. It's a good cinematographer. Everybody seems to know they're almost doing, it's not a spoof of a Hitchcock film, but it is somewhere close to like a wink, wink, not quite satire, not quite spoof, but it does know what it's doing. And it does know that it's silly. Ronald, what about you and Red Eye? How did you feel watching it?
I was really surprised at the pacing. Yeah, I think that was the first thing I noticed. And then it's like a pretty amazing use of space. I mean, you know, the third act could have seemed like a really big surprise that she starts defending herself in the way she does, but it really makes it very clear that in tight spaces he kind of has the advantage because he's a little stronger, just in that way, just a little more strong. But once they get out of those tight spaces, it's very clear she's very, you know, scrappy. She's very scrappy.
Scrappy is the perfect word for her character. Yeah,
finds ways to get away from him very quickly. He really beats the shit out of her really quickly. It's like weird. It's like the headbutt, you know, he does like a bunch of stuff really fast, and he realizes the stakes are a lot crazier because like he could also hurt her, but then it's very clear he has no problem calling to get the dad killed. Like it's, you know, this doesn't feel like a conflict to him at all. He's just like, if you act out of line, I want to make this call. This BMW is going to pull up to his house. He's dead, which I thought was just really cool that he wasn't really playing around with that. And I do like that when they first started talking, I think I could have just watched a rom-com. I know.
It was like Before Sunrise, but like the creepy version of Before Sunrise or something, or Before Sunset.
I could have watched a rom-com version of this. Like it was just really, you know, there's something that I realized about this movie too. That there was an article about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that there aren't a lot of genre bending things that are done well enough. And I think that the fact that we saw something that felt like a rom-com switch to something that's a little more dramatic and like an action film, I think there's space for well done things like that. I think there's more space between watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith and watching things like that. I mean, this is obviously lots of time in between it.
Yeah.
But good versions of these can be really entertaining. I'd love to see more things that kind of played with that, with genres where you think it's something and then it's something else. I actually watched a Tyler Perry movie that almost succeeded in doing that. Almost succeeded, but yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. It was fun. I left being like, holy shit, like, God, like, I was stressed a little bit.
It's
just
funny
when
that
you think he's dead.
Yeah, well, no, go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
Just when you think he's dead, like you know, he just keeps coming back. So
he's that kind of killer, right?
Yes.
I think it's also before you would have given Brian Cox more to do. He's like playing like the nice dad. And it was almost hard for me to believe there wasn't a twist coming where he turns out to be involved or something.
In on it.
Yeah. But it was, and he doesn't tell anyone to fuck off or anything. It was just interesting being like, oh yeah, this is Brian Cox, but this is not Brian Cox in the Brian Cox persona. You know, this is Brian Cox, working actor. The other notable cameo or small role in it that really stood out to me, and this is just kind of funny because it's Colby Donaldson, who was on Survivor. He was like on this first or second season of Survivor, and he's one of those people who went over to acting. He was the head of security for the guy who was the target of the assassination attempt. So he
Mm.
like checks the room and
Oh,
he's around the hotel. But it was just kind of funny. My wife was like, "Was that Colby?" And it's funny that I knew she meant Colby Donaldson from Survivor, even though there could be other Colbys. The funny thing is, he's not like great or anything, but he's not bad in any noticeable way that makes you think that guy's not a real actor. It's just kind of interesting to be like, have a certain kind of fame, and then I'm going to get into acting, and then have a role that's not like a flashy role. Like they weren't putting his name in the trailer or anything. But I do think at this time he was still probably hoping to turn Survivor fame into real fame. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you guys too, just to see if you agreed with me, the way the characters were set up in the airport at the beginning, I really felt like Final Destination movie energy.
A
Of like,
vibe. Yeah.
just because everybody that's on the plane got like a couple of these
A
kids
moment. Yeah.
are
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
this, and this woman,
yeah.
well, she's really flirting with him, and this guy's a real asshole. And there was a part of me that thought we were going to see those characters come to the fore more as the story really took off on the plane. But instead, we really do get off the plane. Like when things get to the point where it would be ridiculous to figure out a way to keep them on the plane, they get off the plane. So I was wondering how they stay on the plane the whole time, and that's not what they do. So there is some alternate world where they tried to keep this as like a suspense thriller that doesn't leave the plane. But I kept thinking about the fact that if anybody, like, there's too many, he's too outnumbered. It would be ridiculous to think that, even though it's happened in real life, it'd be ridiculous to sort of see a scene where he manages to completely control that entire situation.
Right. Right.
But I still was a little surprised that most of the climax and the entirety of the climax doesn't, have anything to do with the whole red eye plane concept. So I thought I would see a little bit more from the people on the plane. But other than that, I mean, I don't even really call that a complaint. That's just an observation that I thought the movie was going to do that trick of somehow, it all takes place in a phone booth. It all takes place in one room. And that wasn't the conceit. But in a
And then
way, I'm
doesn't,
kind of
yeah.
glad, because it could have gotten ridiculous having to be like, there would have to be other agents of his on the plane. That's what I was thinking, is that somebody's a mole for him. And I kept trying to think, is that flight attendant? Is she on the level? But that wasn't where the movie was going. So no, I mean, I guess I'll agree with the people that say this movie's kind of silly and B movie and kind of schlocky, but I don't really think those are bad traits for a movie that goes down this easy. So yeah, I'm glad to finally see Red Eye. Now, Ronald, you said something interesting to me, though. You said you thought you'd seen it, but then you found out you haven't. I believe we on this show have talked about this before, of that in a conversation with you guys, sometimes one of us will say, yeah, just to get through the conversation and to, like, because you understand something about a movie. But isn't it weird to realize you haven't seen a movie and then wonder, did I pretend to see that movie on an episode of Movie Schmovie at some point? I know there are movies that if you guys hear I haven't seen, you'd be surprised, because you
think you're
probably
right.
said something to me about them and I said, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I Mandela affected the shit out of myself. I'm thinking that I really did think that I saw this movie. Like, I think the trailer really sat with me. I remember it. I remember vividly seeing it on TV and be like, that looks scary. I'd love to see that. And then I think it's just one of those movies that I never saw. Yeah. Wow. Cool.
Who's up next? You,
Yeah,
Ronald?
I'm
Ronald, I
next.
think
you go.
Yeah, man. So I want to take it
I know you've
back.
probably thought long and hard about what this pick is.
Well,
Spent probably a week thinking about it, I bet.
Yeah, probably nothing but.
yeah. Okay.
That's why you didn't come to Dune the other night.
There's something to that.
That's what he was doing. He was
Yeah.
picking his next required
Yeah.
viewing. Nah, that makes sense.
And going like,
So,
no.
I've always wanted to get into the dirty side of the UK, the dirty side of London. And the last movie that we saw, what was the name of that? With
The Bloody Friday, or what was it
wasn't
called?
that your pick? Was that pick?
Yeah,
your
it
pick,
was.
John?
It was. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. With the guy from
the long
Good Friday.
Long Good Friday. Yeah.
Longer
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah.
Okay.
The Bob Hoskins.
Super random. Longer Friday is getting a 4K remaster. So let's revisit this after it comes out.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to go back to a director who I thought was going to be one of my favorite directors, who didn't quite become one of my favorite directors, but I love one of his masterpieces.
Ooh.
And that's Nicholas Winding Refn. I want to take it back, way back, to his first movie. And he made a trilogy of them that I'd never seen before.
Watch Only God Forgives again.
I was like, we've gone over this, guys.
So at first I was going to pick Bronson because that was early Netflix. I don't know if you remember. It was like,
hell yeah.
When Netflix had streaming movies, it was like Bronson, and then a couple other movies.
It was a huge movie to get talked about in the back of the Apple store that we all worked at. Bronson hit in that era, and I remember everybody was talking about Bronson during that period. And now that makes sense. That maybe it was like a streaming movie that was available in a way that movies hadn't been in a while.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
So I want to take you back to his first film, one called Pusher, which I've always heard about the Pusher trilogy. I've always heard about how gritty it is and street culture and things like that. And I'm super interested. There is something really cool about it. We have a very young Mads Mikkelsen. So yeah, I've never seen the movies. Came out in 1996. I would love to see what a 1996 Mads looks like. We're gonna be really interested to watch. But this was the movie. Whenever you hear like gritty crime thrillers in the UK, this typically was one that was thrown out. I've never seen it in my life. So Pusher is my pick. Now what is it on? That's another story. Let's see what it's on.
Looks like it's on
Tubi.
Prime. Yeah, see, it looks like it's on Prime Video.
Yep.
Looks like it's on Hulu.
Okay.
Tubi. It's on Canopy for free, and it's also on Plex. Got to plug Plex. Plex Movies for free.
Plex Movies, man.
Yeah. Well, you got lots of options for Pusher.
So I'll tell you this: if you want it for free but better sound, I'd probably go with Amazon Prime. I'd probably go with that in terms of the free ones. If you want it for free and also want it to have no commercials and also want it to have good sound, go with Amazon. I'm pushing you towards Amazon or Plex.
You're pushing.
Plex will have commercials.
Amazon.
I'll push her.
I see what you did. Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Cool. No, this is one that if you guys talked about it, I might pretend I'd seen it just to get through the conversation. But no, this is one that I feel like I should have seen, especially because I love Mads Mikkelsen.
Right. It feels
more
like
than
something
anyone else in the world. It's an exaggeration, but I love the guy.
It feels like something one of us should have seen, but for some reason.
I've definitely seen this. Oh, I've seen this.
You seen it?
Oh,
absolutely.
You've
seen it before?
Yeah.
Why'd you lie to me? You should have just said it immediately.
Well, I didn't lie. We hadn't gotten to have you guys seen this or not.
No.
I was
Have you seen the whole trilogy? Have you seen?
No, I have not seen the trilogy.
Okay, gotcha.
I've only seen the first one.
This.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Again, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Canopy, Tubi, and Plex. There's plenty of places to watch this with a subscription for the most of them. But Canopy is free, Tubi's free, Plex is free, and if you have Amazon subscription, Prime Video or Hulu Video, like Ronald's recommending Amazon.
Yeah.
You're a shill for Amazon.
You getting like a little kickback somewhere, Ronald? What's going on here?
I think I am. Put in promo code Ron. Yeah.
Did you see the Gary Gulman stand-up, his most recent one, where he talks about, there's a little tip to all of you in terms of the code. Summer savings, but use $ for the S's. Just try it and for all the codes, he said.
That's really smart. That's really smart. I'm gonna try that.
No, that's awesome. That's a great one. That's a great choice. I love when it's a pick like that. That is like it feels like it would have been a movie schmovie movie, but it just predates our existence.
I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, just because when this comes out, the episode comes out, the trailer will be out for it, but we've talked about our love of The Strangers, the film that we've talked about that a lot on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we may have even mentioned briefly that like how Rennie Harlan kind of is doing like a reboot trilogy of The Strangers, that all 3 films are coming out this year. And it's kind of been, they've been teasing it over the past few months.
Like X and Pearl did in the same,
except even more.
What's that?
Like the way
except even shorter time frame between them is
yeah. I think the first one comes out in May, and then I think they come out through the end of the year or something, like every 3 months or something.
That's awesome.
But just to say, like, huge fans of the original movie, and not to speak to what these films end up being. I love the idea of like, kind of like Fear Street did, where they had these movies come out in a shorter window of time. in this case, a trilogy, part 1, 2, 3. But they've really kind of kicked in some of the marketing recently for the first one, which again I said comes out in May. It's just over 2 months from now.
Yeah.
But today, the day we're recording this, which is Thursday, the teaser posters have come out. They announced that a trailer's coming out on Friday, March 1st. So definitely going to check that out when it comes out. So I want to, recommend anybody that may have an interest in that. But also just to give kudos, I love a great marketing idea. And today on their Instagram live feed was basically a live feed of what looked like a ring cam of the house from the movie with the strangers outside, basically haunting the front door of the house or like kind of creeping and lurking. Again, I just love getting, ideas, like seeing things like that for marketing that is just so creative and smart and modern. And, I just wanted to say thank you for that because I have a ring cam and like, I don't know. It's just such a smart thing, and it's like so easy to do that with just like a feed of somebody's front door.
Yeah,
and it's scary as shit because you look at your camera sometimes, you're like, what is going on outside of my house?
Or even just you're staring at footage. Like Nikki will check. We have cams that we put up around the house when we leave, especially if we're gone for a few days and we want to check on the cats. And we'll check on the cats, and I'm just always watching it like, oh, look, look, Nibbler just came through, and oh, look, there's Hector. And I always think, what would you do if in the background you just saw a person walk across, or like a shadow move or something, and you're sitting there, you'd be hours away and going like, what the fuck is happening? So it's like there's this weird thing of like you've got cameras so that you don't miss anything. But I'm reminded of that whole thing of like if you're going to your house, you come back from a trip, you know how you search your house?
Yeah.
I think the comedian Todd Glass, I'm a stand-up addict tonight, apparently. He had this bit about searching your house, and then like, what if you pulled back the shower curtain and there was an axe murderer back there? You haven't really thought about what you would do. You haven't really prepared yourself. You're searching the house, but you're sort of like, oh, now I know. Oh, but I didn't, there's no benefit to what I'm doing because now I'm just getting killed. Because I didn't it's not like you do it like you're not clearing the house like a cop or something. But I think ring cameras have some of that, or surveillance footage of your own home has that quality of like you're watching, you're looking, and you're like, I don't really want to like, I'm glad I can see something if it happens, but I really don't want to be looking at this when and then see something, it's, I don't know, it's like nightmare fuel in a way. So that's smart. And I liked the sequel to The Strangers too. I know that people don't talk about it much. It's not,
I did too, man.
It's not like in the same league of the first one in terms of how simple it keeps it, but I like the way that it expands it to say, well, in this other one, we're in a house that's a little bit isolated. Well, in this one, we're in like a trailer park community, but it gives you like basically like a neighborhood that nobody's in. And I think that's a good, creepy concept because it's off season and people aren't staying in their like vacation trailers or whatever. So I think that I'll be interested to see what they do that's new, and also how it's the basis of a trilogy. Like I'm very curious. That makes me think there's a storyline, and the fact that they actually got to make them and they're actually all coming out, it makes me think maybe the studio's a little bullish on it. Maybe they've got something kind of fun. So I'm super psyched for this.
Yeah, can't wait.
Oh my God, I didn't know they were doing a trilogy. You gave me a lot of new news in this in real time. I'm like, holy.
Well, it's like the idea is like, none of the cast involved really is of note. I mean, one of the
That's
like
cool.
the female lead is most people probably know her from Riverdale. She's one of the actresses from that show, but like otherwise, like Rennie Harlin's the name, and I don't know how that makes you feel about a new trilogy of Strangers films.
I mean, honestly, 50-50. I love
it could go either way. He's made some awesome kind of horror movies that I love. Or just movies in general that I love, but not a name you've heard of in a while. And to have 3 movies coming out over the course of basically 6 months that are like studio IP films, it's kind of like a out of left field move, which I dig that, But yeah, I'm excited for these movies. I can't wait to watch the trailer tomorrow.
Yeah, got me psyched.
So what's next?
Well, let's talk about Ronald's gigantic couch.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if only you had that couch at the peak of the pandemic, we could have we could have socially distanced. We could have basically just stayed together the entire pandemic and just watched every movie we ever wanted to. You on the far left, John, Ron in the middle, obviously. I'm on the right, and I mean, easily 6 feet between us.
Yeah.
And our little legs sticking out in front of us and our little sock feet. It was adorable. Listeners should know. We should have gotten a picture.
We should have had a picture taken.
I had somebody literally come down, look at the couch and go, "Ay, Dios mío." Like not even like in a funny way. She was like really saying it.
Wow.
I was like, thank you so much. This is The highest compliment is to get
The highest compliment to a couch is ideal.
yeah.
What if someone says "sacre bleu"?
I would actually love that too. Just they would have to slap their head as they said it.
Mein Gott! It's all the different languages. But yes, like
yeah,
that. It was awesome couch and awesome sound system and nice big screen and you know this I didn't realize until we were doing this. I'd never saw this movie in the theater, so this was my theatrical
oh,
experience for this movie. I watched it when it came out. You know, it came out day and date last year, but I didn't even think about that until seeing. And this, Ronald, this is not new information, but I didn't think about that until seeing the new one and realizing, oh, I didn't really see the first one. I didn't get to appreciate what they're doing in the proper like magnitude, you know. But
yeah,
seeing
for
the first
sure.
one at your house, watching it again for the first, you know, it's second time I've seen this movie, was a great experience and definitely got me primed for the sequel. And also having just finished reading the book myself, I like for the first time, I feel like I got so much more out of it than I have any previous viewing of
Oh
Dune of any
wow.
form, because I finally was understanding all the references behind the things that they sort of tease at. And you know, appreciating or questioning the adaptation choices and that kind of thing. So yeah, great experience, and thank you so much for having us over. And you know, I'm a little jealous that that's how you watch movies. You get to
It's
really
fun.
like soak in them.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to like I I've been borderlining on desperation trying to get you guys to come to the house. And I didn't want to keep being like, come on, man, come to the house.
Don't feel desperate. Just tell me
Yeah.
the day and time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so
Like, there's
fun.
no desperation here. It's like,
Yeah, because like Dune is one of those ones. I mean, so what we did, just so for some transparency, I just wanted Steve to hear a couple of his like scenes that he had thought about seeing, you know.
yeah,
And the thing is, like, I'm pretty open. I love sound bars and stuff. We have one upstairs that I often watch movies on just because Erin just doesn't want to come down, and she is allergic to the bass and stuff. She's just like, I can't take any of this stuff. So we like to watch it on the sound bar upstairs. But Steve picked out a scene I didn't even think about putting on in the on the sound system. That fucking what scene was it, Steve?
it
Tell
was.
our listeners.
It's like the sequence in Super 8 when the kids are at the train station filming and the train derails. When you first kind of meet the creature that's in the train car. And that's always been like, not that I've ever had a sound system anywhere near what you have, but that's always been like the first one in my, you know, adult life where I've had a decent sound bar or whatever. I have a
Yeah.
subwoofer, but like that's the one I crank up and watch, mainly because I love that movie, but also just because there's so much dynamic sound in that movie kind of coming
Yeah.
from, especially with you, what you have, like where you have speakers in the ceiling behind me, like you just hear every little ping of like something exploding or crashing, and you still hear the film reel rolling that the kids were filming in the scene. It's like, it's a super amazing sequence, period. But I mean, with your kind of setup, when I said that to you and like you were like, "Where is Super 8?" Okay, and then you watched it, and you're like, "Holy shit!" Like I didn't even think that would sound that good.
Right.
I was overwhelmed a little bit. Like it
Yeah,
because that scene goes on for way longer than
yeah,
you think
it
it's going to.
does.
You're like, okay, the train crashed. And then it's flipping more, and then more things happen. And then the car comes around, and it's like, this is
Yeah,
it's overwhelming.
it was awesome though, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then you put on Ready Player One, the opening race, which was awesome, just to kind of test it out.
That's like my favorite
Yeah,
scene to
that's
play.
awesome. That's awesome kind of like flex of like, look at my sound system, guys.
Yeah.
This all happened
But
before I got there, but after we watched the
Yeah,
movie,
John, we were just, you know, hanging tight, waiting for you to get your Royal Farms.
I thought you guys seemed kind of relaxed. You guys already
we
had
were like super relaxed.
no,
Because we
the
were so scared to death from explosions in our ears.
but we watched that. You did seem rattled. No, we watched that. The chase from the Batman, the car chase
Yeah,
from
the
Batman.
car
And that
chase,
was
Oh,
similar to what you were just
Batmobile.
saying, like the sound design and the immersive quality of it. Like I thought that was a cool scene before, but I was watching it in that way. I was like, oh yeah, shit. Like that's another movie that I just haven't watched since it came
Damn.
out, but I think I could easily
Yeah.
enjoy another round.
Did you see that in theaters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that
It's
was
a
like,
great
it was
movie.
like Dune and the Batman were the two that I kind of went back to theaters to watch
Yeah.
Yeah.
at that time. So yeah, there those. But yeah, man, like it's definitely kind of something where like at some point I would love to have some sort of setup like that. Like I don't know if it to the degree that you have like all the, you know, the front firings and the wall and everything, like that's some next level stuff. But yeah, we got to do that more often, and maybe, you know, pick out some like those kinds of, especially those kinds of movies, like that really flex the technology that you have sitting in that basement of yours. It's pretty impressive.
I purposely didn't watch Dune so I could watch it with you guys, which means I curved it for like, I was probably going to try to watch it like 3 times before it came out.
Right.
I was like, I need to watch it with you guys. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It was well worth it. It was well worth it. It was nuts.
Yeah, I feel like rewatching it. And honestly, like I think I maybe had watched it one other time between seeing it in the theaters. I think I'd mentioned like, you know, my wife is like a quarter of the way through it. I'm just like, we're still stepping her through it, and we got to try to watch it because I'd like to go see Dune Part 2 with her in theaters again, maybe. But like all the things that I remember, because I was able to see it when I did see it in theaters, was like one of the AMC Prime houses, which is like their off-brand Dolby house. But like, yeah, those sequences, like when they're using the voice, I think we talked about it after we watched it together. Like beyond just the score and everything else about the sound mixing, like those scenes, like, and I can say this in that, again, not talking about the second movie to ruin anything for Ronald, but like only because I went from Ronald's basement to an IMAX theater the next night. And I can say that like the way I felt watching it at your house, especially in the scenes when they're using the voice, you know, it was super similar. Like,
oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like the presentation in your house is amazing. But like when we watched the part 1 together, like those scenes like rattle me. Like I feel like when he's trying to use it and then she uses it, just are like striking, you know, like it laying on your couch, like when those scenes hit, like mainly when they're in that copter trying to get out. And he's trying to do it, and she's telling him to pitch it differently, and it's just like that scene is just amazing. And like seeing it with that kind of surround sound again, which I've watched it maybe one time since theaters, it definitely does not hit the same way. Like the scene plays the same way, but what you feel is like completely different when you can really hear the mix of that voice in those scenes that they use. Like it just sounds entirely different.
I know it's like spatial stuff with that. Especially earlier in the movie when you're kind of getting the hang of the fact that there's even these kind of psychic voices. There was like right before you would hear the voice, there would be like a kind of a rumble, and it was like foreshadowing the voice. And I swear the first time it happened in the movie, I feel like we all three went, "Oh
yeah,
we did,"
because it was kind of what you were saying, Steve, of like, "Oh shit!" Like that's how it's going to sound. And it really did. I mean, I honestly, again, I didn't see it in the theater, but I don't remember seeing it in the theater is such a different experience, but I don't remember anything making me think like that. Like, oh, like I was surprised at, I think it might just be the different speakers, a sound starting on one speaker and moving to another, that I really felt it spatially. And it really helped create that impression of this voice being in your head. It almost made me think this would be an interesting movie to watch just with headphones on too, just because I bet the stereo picture in that sense is pretty insane. But no, I really much like that was a huge part of the fun of this was kind of waiting to watch this movie. And then when we talked about it, we were all very, very nerdily excited about it. But yeah, it's easy to say, like next time we have like a screener or something for a movie that we're excited about, that's kind of a big movie, that would be a no-brainer to, watch it over there so we can do it all together. So
for sure.
It was super fun. Popcorn next time. I don't know why I didn't think to get popcorn. I was like, brain was scrambled. But yeah, popcorn next time for sure. Actually,
probably the driest popcorn.
Nice.
I bought this is the
glow in the dark.
Glow in the dark edition. For some reason, Walmart is making 5 or 6 movies that are like glow in the dark steel books, but
anything to get you to buy it at this point, I guess.
Anything to get you to buy.
Although Ronald, you're right, more people are talking about physical media right now. I see a lot more like news stories, because now here's what it is. If there is a movie that's not physical and it's going to come out physical, there's usually now like a company that has to intercede, and like a company that does do physical is like going to be like a middleman for movies that the studio is not going to produce anything for. So I've actually seen a couple stories this week about movies that have been out for a while. I can't remember now what they were. But I just remembered seeing that and thinking, oh, this is kind of what Ronald was saying, is that this is almost like a boutique item. It's almost like they figured out how they can charge you more for these things again. And so they're real excited. But it is true that the package, people like the package. People like the nice, like you the Steelbook, but even then, just the bonus features, all that kind of stuff that didn't feel special for so many years on
For
DVDs
sure.
and Blu-rays. Now it's actually back around to feeling like, don't you kind of want this now that you've seen
Yeah.
things you love disappear from all the services that you have?
Yeah, something to it, man. Like there's the tactile part of it, but also like some movies, like you know what, a weird movie that somebody pointed out that you can't get anywhere is Cocoon. Cocoon is in some sort of like hell where you can't really get
That's wild.
get it on anything streaming. So what's happened is Cocoon on Blu-ray is the only the latest version. And you can probably get it for like 30 and up. People, a sealed one's probably like $120. But the fact that Cocoon is one of those movies, there's something happening where some things aren't being accessible, and it's happening with video games a lot too. So, the Wii U's store just shut down for a previous system, which means that all the games are gone. Like, so people are physically trying to download them or find versions of them. So there's a thing to it. It's not just people just trying to buy things because they're physical. It's because we're literally losing our media. And the more you rely on solely streaming, I'm not saying don't rely on streaming because streaming is incredible. It's incredible. The fact that we can watch something, a studio can pivot. I mean, we've seen this like maybe 6 or 7 times lately. A studio could pivot and say, hey, this movie's coming out Monday. Hit the button and it comes out Monday. That's incredible. But once that happens, can I get something where I could watch it at home? Can I get some interviews? Can I, how did this get made? Some of that stuff isn't included. I'm glad that Hulu is starting to do stuff like that. I'm starting to see like, especially with Shogun, I can't wait to talk about that next week. Some of the stuff that they've included on the show, like there's the podcast attached to it. You can watch the dubbed version. But we're losing it. We're losing that stuff, and it's starting to really bother the shit out of me.
It's funny you mentioned Cocoon because like it does seem also like there's a pocket of time where beyond the factor of like a streaming property not being available in physical because of where it originated. It's more like it does seem like there's like a batch of titles from a time, and these are not titles that were not popular. Cocoon was one of the highest grossing films of the year it came out. And the other ones that come to mind even are like massive titles from massive directors. It's well known like how long it took The Abyss or True Lies, these James Cameron films. And they're not the only ones, but it is kind of interesting that like there is like a run of a decade or so of like these like massive blockbuster movies that don't have a really great version of existence on physical media still. You'll find the cream of the crop for the time. You'll find the VHS or the Laserdisc, or maybe if you're lucky and it got into the late 90s, a DVD Blu-ray, like you just said about Cocoon. But like get out of that in the last 25 years, it's like these 4K options or whatever else is out there. Like it's kind of crazy that like there's definitely, I guess there's factors of like a shrinking marketplace. But then, you have this boutique uprising kind of want for the physical media. So I don't know. I guess it's like you almost wonder like what it takes to like get the demand, or if it's a licensing problem because of like all these studios that used to exist back then that worked underneath of the majors. Maybe there's like a contractual issue with getting them onto physical media. But it's weird, like because it happens a lot. And even like for movies that I would like to own, like just to have forever, that aren't blockbusters, movies that like I loved growing up that were like kind of more on the fringe of, the big popular movies that like only ever existed on VHS that you literally would have to get from somebody capturing it digitally and burning it onto a DVD. Like I have movies like that in my shelf that like I bought on eBay because like I don't have the VHS because you can't find it.
Can't find
like,
that shit
yeah, I talked about the
stuff.
movie. I think I've talked about the movie Rad before. It's like one of my all-time favorite movies growing up. BMX movie. And like all it ever existed was on VHS. And like for decades, that's all you could ever do. And you could never find the VHS. And I ended up buying it. And like when I was like right out of like maybe 2006 or 7, like on eBay, like a burnt DVD of a VHS rip.
Like DVD-R.
whatever, like so I can watch it on my DVD player, right, or my Blu-ray player. But then like 5 years ago, there's a boutique house that gets the title, and they release an amazing Blu-ray with awesome new material, and it's just like, how does a movie like Rad find that? Which it's like a niche title.
Yeah.
But then you have a movie like Cocoon, again, one of the top grossing movies of the year came out, and you can't get it. It's crazy.
A very similar story. So my dad showed me Sweetback's Badass Song when I was a kid. So Criterion released it, but only under Melvin Van Peebles like movie collection. And that's like $150. I'm not spending $150 for something. Then Vinegar Syndrome released it.
That's who released Rad. Vinegar Syndrome.
They released this, and it includes a DVD, but this was like limited. It was limited to like 1,000 or
1,000. Yeah, that's what mine was.
So couldn't find it for years. And then I went on eBay like a month ago, and people are selling it for like $120. I'm like, all right, if I got to, I'll do it, but I'll stick to my guns. This guy was selling it for $70. I was like, man, I know you want to sell this for $70. Can you sell it to me for $40? I'll buy it right now. It's been on there for like 3 months. Nobody's bought it. He was like, cool. I pressed accept. I bought it.
Wow.
But it's just one of those things. I've been wanting this movie forever. It's like a real, I love this movie. It's a strange blaxploitation movie. It's like one of the most popular movies to ever come out in the blaxploitation genre. Melvin Van Peebles. And it's so weird, man. Like this stuff is happening more and more and more, where it's getting harder and harder to find things. But I'm glad you found Red, man. That's rad that you found Red.
It's rad that you found
Look at that.
And I'm a little surprised that Cocoon is like that too.
It's like this weird, like there's like articles.
It's not alone though. Yeah,
it's not. No, it's definitely not when you start tallying up those movies. But so folks out there, if anybody's got any pull, get Dune, and not get Dune, get Cocoon onto a good resting place, either someplace where you can watch it or someplace where you can own it. So it won't get any older and it won't ever die.
Yeah, man.
That movie was such a big movie when I was like,
it was huge.
12 or 13.
Crazy.
It was a huge movie, man. It was like an HBO movie. They used to play it constantly, and then it just disappeared.
And suddenly you had like kids in the 80s who knew who Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy were. You know what I mean? Like that's the part of it that's really wild. No, I think I really love that movie. I've not seen it in forever, but I feel like it was one of those cable staples for a while. I know I must have seen that movie 20 times when I was younger, just on television. It's crazy. It's Ron Howard, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's another reason why it seems a little strange that it would fall out. But I think you're right, Steve. Anytime you go back far enough and you look at just like, it depends on the era, and it's like we're now at a point where whatever you think about this person's filmography and the importance of it, 10, 20 years down the road, that relevance factor, that like people aren't really like, why would someone be talking about a director if let's say if they go several years without making a movie,
right,
and they've been around for a long time, it's kind of got that impression of like the culture kind of wants to chew up something new and spit it out. It's not really digging through, wait, who hasn't put a movie out in a while, or I don't know. So it is weird that it moves so fast that even a big movie like that could kind of become a niche item.
Wow, stuff, man.
Well, I guess we're not trying to send you away, Ronald, but we need to talk about Dune Part 2. And I guess I'll just go ahead and tell you, you didn't miss anything. This is a piece of shit. It's just a steaming turd, so you don't have to worry. Yeah, no.
Fuck.
Those aren't my real feelings, but I won't say what my real feelings are. But Ronald, it's been nice talking to you. I actually think we are not going to spoil it, but I respect your need to get out of earshot.
Oh man,
and be totally fresh going into it.
I just want to be fresh. I just want to experience it. I'm gonna try to see it tomorrow. We're gonna test. Make sure I'm okay.
Nice.
If not, if I'm doing well, right to the movie.
You're there.
Ronald, I'm going to do one thing. This is not about the movie. This is about the experience we had watching it. Okay. I'm going to tell you something, and then when you watch the movie, I want you to see if you can figure out when what I'm about to tell you happened.
Sure.
I got to be privy, sitting next to our boy Steve, during one of those fantastic Steve giddiness moments where he moves around in his seat.
I
and
love
he moves
that.
forward, and he gets his hands up on his face, and it's fantastic. And the one thing is, I agree, this scene was fantastic. But I'm so glad. Like, if there's anything that made me feel like the movies are back, baby, it was being next to Steve when he has one of his like childish glee, infectious childish glee. So yes, there's one of those in
Okay.
this movie. So
I
after you
can't
see
wait.
it, I want you to see if you can guess when it was that
You
Steve got
you
so excited.
telling that before I go, I just want to talk about one thing that I miss. Do you remember those commercials? Of course you remember these commercials where they'd have the movie poster and a kid or an adult right there, and they're just like, yeah, I almost pooped my pants watching this movie. It's
You mean
like
where they would film people coming out of the movie?
Right,
and,
right out of the
sometimes
theater.
it'd be right in front. Sometimes it'd be right in front of the poster, just saying how they liked it.
Yeah.
They need to bring that back, man. I miss
what I
that
love
so
was
much.
what was the night vision footage of people watching
Of the horror movies, yeah.
God.
You know,
They stopped that too. Oh, I missed that so
I
much.
never, yeah, that for like obviously the more recent one that's like fueled the marketing was Paranormal Activity.
right?
Like I'll never forget
Yeah.
those teaser trailers for that movie. But yeah, they do that sometimes still. But yeah, I definitely have like references of like, you know, the enthusiastic kid like standing in front of the poster like
Oh
Michelangelo was awesome, like in front of the Ninja Turtles or something. Like you're like, oh shit, he said Michelangelo is awesome. I'm definitely going to that movie
I'm
now.
going to see that movie.
That kid seemed to know what he was talking about.
Yeah, I trust that dude.
Michelangelo. Yeah.
He had a
Oh my
JanSport backpack going. I'm trusting that guy. No, yeah, that's funny. No, but yeah. There's a scene. Yeah, that scene that John, and he said that to me after we left the theater, and I was like, I thought it when it was happening, but I was like, I can't control it.
No, don't ever,
And
don't ever control it.
And I'm telling you, I
don't you dare
never
grow up on
will
me,
because
Steve.
I'm not sorry for it at all.
Yeah, don't be.
Why
Because
should you?
like Ronald's experienced that with me when we saw Avengers.
Yeah.
Many movies when we've seen together, like moments like remember when the Hulk came in Avengers?
Steve
And with Loki?
almost jumped. I think he wanted to be in the scene. He almost jumped into the scene. He's like, he got up, like,
It's exciting.
perched himself on the seat. It was
It's
just
like-
like,
If you've ever seen the meme of like they put a cucumber next to a cat and then the cat sees the cucumber and then kind of does this weird like, jump back kind of move. There was a little bit, there's one of those, and then just a lot of like seeming like you're trying to get as close to the screen as you can. You know,
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm trying to.
It's fantastic.
And I'm also just like a part of it's like my face or my hand. I'm
Yeah.
like,
no, it is.
like how is this being like how this is like the movie magic that you want to see.
it's movie
And it's like
magic,
absolutely.
man.
it really is those things that you like. Even when we were watching Ready Player One at your house, Ronald, that clip. I even said like when I saw that in the theater,
that movie gets me, man.
and I didn't read that book or anything. I had no reference. It's like that was another example. There's moments when I saw that, like when they do the Shining piece at the end, and like, you know, that first race when you see all these like pop culture things that I didn't know what the property was, so I went into that cold and I was like, this is my guy making like one of the more entertaining things I've seen in a long ass time. But yeah, those moments in movies like. And there's definitely a really, really great one in Dune Part 2 with no spoilers. That it's just like I couldn't help but like
You pooped yourself.
I was just in awe of it, to be honest with you.
You would have been outside the movie like, yeah. Go
Like,
see
yeah, guys, go see it. 2 thumbs up.
Dune Part 2 comes off this Friday.
Yeah, when I do the 2 thumbs up, and then I go a lower register like comes out Friday.
All right,
All right, we'll talk briefly, and then maybe I'll like bring you back or something.
Okay,
Or do you want to just go to bed?
I'm not gonna go to. Just shoot me a text. Just
Yeah.
shoot me a text. I'll be around. I'm just gonna get something to drink.
Yeah, we're not going to
All right.
spoil it for listeners either. So,
Okay.
all right, Ronald.
All right,
we'll
I'll see you in a second.
So, Steve,
Hey, man.
Dune Part 2. I mean, you know, we love us some Denis Villeneuve on this podcast. We've talked before in person about how sexy this cast is. And it's interesting that they kind of leveled up in the second one. The first movie already had enough hotness in it. But I mean, you know, it's astounding visuals, really well crafted, like the overall look and feel of it is just a really carefully put together movie. I think we've always thought Denis movies are very visually interesting, but I like the way that, I don't know, there's just a tonal consistency and a sure hand that these movies have towards the material that I think makes them just really worthy movies to look at on a big screen and to get excited about and get hyped about. Like whatever you think about the specifics, I think this is that kind of event movie that
Totally agree.
feels like a big screen. It feels like the way to see it, to have moments like what you had, is to let it wash over you in as big of a format as possible.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's also just like you have a movie like again, Dune Part 1 or Dune came out, you know, in the day and date release of the whole HBO Max Warner Brothers era. So, you know, it did have a theatrical run, but a lot of people did see it at home, and you know, a lot of people still saw it in theaters, and that movie offered a lot for a theatrical experience. But I think everything it offered is just like times two, I think, with this movie. Not to be kind of cheesy or anything like that. I just feel like the time that you get with the characters, specifically Zendaya's character, you know, Chani, and I just feel like even Timothy Chalamet, I mentioned before, like that movie is kind of what the first one is really kind of what made me believe in him as maybe a star. Like I think he's a great actor, especially of that generation. He's one of the best that they have. But just in terms of like a presence on screen beyond being like attractive, there was like moments in the first movie that like really made me a believer, and there's more of them in this one.
Yeah.
But honestly, like all I think about is like this the technical achievement that it is. I think that, you know, it got attention. The first one got attention like at the Oscars for, you know, I think score and cinematography, Greg Fraser's cinematography in that one. And this one is just like some of the best you'll see. And I think that is just like an all around achievement. I think this is a well acted, you know, well scored, incredibly shot, incredible direction, just an engaging, you know, like an a big sci-fi epic that we don't really, you know, we don't have the benefit of seeing too often on the screen. We kind of, even though you and I were talking briefly after the screening, like, and again, this is not a criticism because like I love the comic book movies, but like that's the era that we're in right now in terms of blockbusters,
or have been
and
for so long, at least,
for yeah, for a decade, you know, like we've had some that have broken through that have not been that. Like there's been some, you know, beyond just like movies that make a lot of money, like, you know, you had Oppenheimer and Barbie, and you know, specifically maybe Avatar is a better example, the second Avatar film. But like these kind of big idea movies that are like huge scale, large budget, large cast, and really is intended to be something to be seen, you know, on the biggest screen that you can find, whether that's, you know, an IMAX or Dolby, or, you know, just some sort of large format in your market. But I don't know. I just like, you know, going into this movie, just all the buzz around it and, you know, the great reviews that had come out, like my expectations were really high already. And, you know, maybe this was like my most anticipated movie of the year. To see it in February is kind of weird.
It was your most anticipated movie of 2023.
It was, right.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like, and I finally got to see it, and I was completely buzzing after watching it, and even just talking to Aaron about it when I got home. And I can't wait to see it again. To be honest with you, I want to go check it out. We were fortunate to see it on one of the IMAX screens. I do want to watch it in Dolby. It's my preferred house, you know, when I can check these movies out in theaters. So I definitely am looking forward to watching it on a Dolby screen. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention was like, I mentioned Greg Fraser, and he's like one of the guys right now. Like he's like one of the best in the business right now, shooting film or shooting movies. Him, Roger Deakins, and like for a movie that is like they shot a lot of this movie like on sets, on locations, you know, and like and he's a filmmaker or a cinematographer who has utilized something like the volume before. And I wanted to just know that like there's situations where the volume, you can tell, is like a really effective means to shoot a film, you know, with LED lighting and things like that. But then there's some, you know, and listening to him talk about this on a podcast like that don't really lend itself to that. And a lot of what they accomplished in Dune that is amazing is the atmosphere around the characters in the movie, which he felt, and then he felt like really maybe couldn't be accomplished as effectively using something like the volume.
Yeah, I feel like it would lose. There was something about those. Not to say that there's no CGI. There's tons of CGI, but
yeah.
The sets, the scenarios, the locations. That there were different things that gave it like a tactile,
exactly,
or something that I think that. I mean, you can picture I mean, not to say that you can't do great work on the volume, but when I picture the volume, what I picture is not even necessarily great work being done on the volume. Like all those Star Wars television shows that use the volume, it starts to look like a cost-cutting measure more so than, like you were saying, a piece of artistry that you can use.
For sure.
It starts to seem much more like you're cutting corners by assuming you don't have to build anything, assuming you don't have to travel anywhere.
Right.
And I feel like that's the thing you should not be doing as a filmmaker, is trying to avoid using real locations in real places. But I think it's almost unthinkable to picture this movie having the same impact. If it
Yeah.
was, if you could feel that sort of fake airless quality, that, you know, the sci-fi epic part would still fly. But I think whatever that other part is that you're talking about that gives this movie such intense atmosphere, and it's a pretty sustained mood piece too. I mean,
For
it's
sure.
it's actually, I was thinking about this with regards to the David Lynch version from the 80s. The David Lynch version is almost like an attempt to turn it into more of a conventional rousing adventure
Venture,
kind of
yeah.
story. Whereas this, you know, this is a pretty, I mean, for what it is, this is a pretty arty, slow-paced, adult
Kind
version
of weird. Yeah.
weird of this kind of thing. And even knowing the books, there's tons of things that they could have fit in, because there's plenty of time, that they didn't, because I think Denny wanted to streamline the story. And there's certain things that I think might have actually made the movie even cooler if they had found a way to put it in there. But I think the fact that they are showing such restraint with, like, whose point of view you're feeling. The first movie, you're really over Paul's shoulder the most.
Right.
In this movie, you're getting a lot more of Chani, or Shani. Is it Shani or Chani?
Shawnee?
But the Zendaya character. I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's, and I even think the Rebecca Ferguson character, Jessica, she's kind of a second lead in the first movie, and she's got a lot to do in this one too. So
Yeah.
I like that, the way that as it spins out and the story gets a little bit bigger, we realize that we've sort of left behind that feeling of seeing everything through Paul's eyes. And now we're kind of seeing things through other people's eyes. And I think the movie pulls off, without saying anything about the story, it pulls off a really neat trick with regards to what is part of the book and the series of books, especially,
Right.
which is just this notion of, what then? Okay, you're the hero, you're the chosen one. You get all these people behind you. You can motivate these people. They can take down these forces. You can, like, be the pivot point. You're the crux of a holy war that could happen. It could really change things. And then it's like, do we want that? Do we want this
Right.
kind of charismatic guy that everybody will do whatever he says? I think it's pretty heady stuff for this kind of movie to get into. And the fact that the plan is to do a trilogy that ties it up with an adaptation of the next book, Dune Messiah, which I now have on my desk just out of reach. I'm very curious about that story, because I think I'm really, like, it's not, there is some stuff about the writing that's, people, you know, you can find people criticizing the writing. There's something kind of dense and a little bit forbidding sometimes about these kind of deep fantasy sci-fi stuff. But what Frank Herbert was explicitly interested in is this exact stuff. Like, it's not like, oh, that's an added feature. He wrote these books to get at that question of,
Yeah.
do you want a messiah? Do you really want a religious leader that can inflame hearts like that?
Yeah.
And I think that it's you know, it's an interesting question, and I like the way the movie gets at it with a lot of patience and maturity for just dealing with, like, you know, adult, like I said, adult characters reacting to this fantasy situation that we've seen before, but not quite like this, or at least not in this current era. We haven't seen something like this, I don't think. The kind of serious, heady version of a fantasy epic.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Like, the headiness of it is if anything, like, this is a movie that I feel like, you know, is enjoyable by, I guess, most moviegoers. But I feel like, you know, that's probably the one thing that maybe limits it. I don't know, in some ways possible, like in terms of like a 4-quadrant kind of movie, in terms of, I guess, just thinking about like box office success, because they're hoping, obviously, this is a massive success, and I have no doubt that it will be. But I don't know, like, but that almost makes me appreciate it more, that it didn't really, and even saying that, like, it's still very it's entertaining, period. Like, you know, there's great performances, very easy to look at people. There's humor in the movie that, like, I didn't even really know that I expected.
Yeah, I didn't either. Like, for Denis Villeneuve or for this material, I didn't expect there to be any. But where they found the laughs was character stuff, like Javier Bardem's character.
Yeah, exactly, and it works, and it works really well.
But it's not like he's a comic relief character, which I think is what we're used to seeing in this type of film. Where,
well, I don't know. Obviously,
funny,
you didn't obviously see Lyle Lyle Crocodile.
No, I just mean, you don't expect, and normally in this kind of movie, you expect to see the comedy come from a comic relief character, rather than a character
yes,
who's
yes.
very dramatic and very involved in the stuff I was just talking about. That's extremely
this
like,
belief. Yeah.
But it's like you see how that belief can be weaponized in a way that's kind of scary, even as we're sort of charmed by how he's able to do that believer thing of like warping what's happening. Like you sort of have a prophecy or a guess you're making, and then something changes that makes that less accurate, and you come up instantly with a rationalization that
like,
makes it so that,
see,
see. You know, he didn't do the thing we thought he would do because he's that good. I just feel like Javier Bardem was fantastic at that stuff.
Yeah, so
at making
good.
him funny without making him silly at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, not to get into any spoilers. Once Ronald sees it, we'll maybe get in, talk a little bit about it again.
Yeah.
But like, it is kind of crazy to me. And I mean, like, I was bummed out when they decided to hold this back, back in, I guess, when November or whatever it was that was supposed to come out. I guess I can see why. I mean, it does seem like they're probably going to have more success with the movie all around by releasing it now. It has a bit of a runway, you know, in terms of these large format screens. But yeah, definitely, you know, it's the kind of thing that I long for, you know, the theatrical experience that just is like, oh, you know, it washes over you and kind of just entertains and changes maybe the way you think about movies in ways, you know?
Yeah.
And there's definitely a couple scenes in this movie that kind of made me feel that way. Like, he kind of changes. There's a scene when you get introduced to Austin Butler is in the film playing Feyd-Rautha. Uh, excuse me. And the way that whole like battle sequence is shot and the characters are interplaying with one another, it's just like, I thought was an amazing introduction to not only the villain or one of the villains of the movie, but a lot of the political game playing going on in the movie from new characters and characters that don't seem to have a big play yet. And, you know, you kind of see that kind of bubble up throughout the film, which I love that stuff. Like,
right.
The political the Game of Thrones, whatever you like. That stuff is,
and it broadens out over characters.
Yes,
that's just the smartest way to do it. Is like introduce a character, see how they connect to this, then find out more about them, and the story broadens out around them, and you suddenly start to realize there are stories within stories and lies within lies and conspiracies within conspiracies, which again could sound really loaded and confusing. But I think back to that, those adaptation choices that they make could honestly be said, like, I've heard of some stuff they shot and didn't include, and I was like,
oh wow,
how could they leave? Because there's some stuff that just didn't fit into this second movie, I think, that I thought they were going to do based on some setup in the first movie.
Oh wow.
And the only thing that's kind of a bummer is I don't think Denny he doesn't do deleted scenes or extended cuts, at least not at this point in his career.
Right.
I could see one day he might do a restoration and a full 5-hour version of this or something. But he just doesn't seem like that guy. I mean, he's not Ridley Scott or someone like that. Who's going to say, oh, when it comes out on physical media, you're going to get an extra hour or something. But I do think that those adaptation choices, even if I don't necessarily agree with all of them, I like the way that when it got to the end, it did keep things sort of simple. And I felt like I had watched the story I watched. And even though there's tons of stuff to say, oh, I can't wait to see what they do with this, it didn't have that incomplete franchise film feeling where you feel like you didn't see a whole idea. And I even think the first Dune does better than a lot of people say of feeling complete, even though it's really half of the story. But especially now that we've got part 1 and 2, the bookend, part 2 is definitely the more movie feeling of the two movies, but it still does all the stuff we're talking about, all these weird kind of meditative scenes, and the timeline is a little confusing. And I think it's a movie that lets you be confused for a few minutes before you hear that line of dialogue or you hear the explanation that makes everything make sense.
It connects it together.
That can be a real risk, but I think that's a real confident thing for a movie like this to do, is like let you look around and squint your eyes and ears and try to figure out what's happening before that scene where somebody says in one sentence the thing that, like, you realize, oh, this is what we've been watching.
Right.
Because sometimes you don't really know why one scene goes to another scene. Do you ever have that where you're like,
yeah,
where, like, are they doing what they're doing because of what happened in the last scene? Or is it just a coincidence that this scene follows that scene? And I feel like there were some points in the middle of this movie where that was happening to me, but it never lost that kind of meditative, dreamlike feeling that kept pulling me through. I just felt like I was looking for what the story thread they were following was at certain points, and then when it gets to the end, it's like all roads lead to Rome. Everything's there in that last last act that keeps going, but it's crazy. It's crazy.
I was like, the third act of the movie is just like aces, man. It's so good. It's incredible.
Anything else?
I'll text Ronald that we're finishing up. No, just yeah, definitely go out and support this movie. I mean, obviously it's a big, huge blockbuster, but it's like we were kind of trying to get at here. It's kind of meditative. It's kind of weird. It's big, dark sci-fi. Like it's something, you know, hopefully I'm pretty confident we'll probably get. I didn't even know going in that there was another thing for Dune, you know, that there would be another movie, because there were talks about, you know, the HBO Max series, like the Sisterhood. So like whatever else gets built out from it, it's just like going into the, you know, part 2, it's like I'll take that. That's what I want, is just this movie. So go see this in the theater, you know, if you can, while it's there. It's got, like I said, it's got at least 2 to 3 weeks on these larger format screens. So if you can, try to see it there. Again, we saw it on IMAX and it looked pretty amazing. But if it's an Adobe screen near you anywhere, I would probably recommend that too. And hopefully Ronald sees it this weekend, and I'm going to try to see it again on Adobe screen so we can
I gotta see it.
circle back and
I've
talk
seen
more.
people saying that they're looking for large format screenings for this weekend, and it's sold out like in different places. So I wonder if this movie's got a little bit of the right kind of see it on the big screen hype that we're trying to build here. You know, so it seems like people know if they're interested in this at all, they definitely want the, you know, the overwhelming experience with it.
That's a good sign. That's that Oppenheimer thing, you know, that most recent thing where like even Ronald going out to, you know, LA or out to California and seeing it in a premium thing, you know, it's like people seek that out from movies that really kind of demand it. And this is a movie that demands it, I think. So it's cool to see a lot of that sold out already.
I think the viewer, you know, I was a little bleak about viewers for a little bit. Like I was just kind of feeling like our palates weren't very sophisticated in the US. And I think I'm just kind of starting to find it, like, sure, that could be true about some things, but I think when it comes down to it, a well-told story is a well-told story. And if there's enough hype behind it, if it's done in the right way, if it feels a little more organic than it feels like people are kind of being forced towards it. Like, you know, Barbenheimer, that whole movement was nuts. Like, the studios couldn't have asked for something like this. You know, it just kind of happened in a cool way. You know, people kind of dressing up in suits and half Barbie, you know, just like nuts things like that. But
again, one other thing I wanted to mention, I had a note. We didn't mention it when John and I were talking. No spoilers for you, Ronald. But we didn't mention like the costume design, and I wanted to just plant that idea because, you know, I hope this is a movie that stays in the conversation come Oscar time next year. But I was looking up Jacqueline West is the costume is just amazing. These tactile, like modern evil looks, and it just looked amazing. Just kudos in that area too. Just across the board, just craft is all over this movie. Yeah, okay, cool. So was there anything else you guys wanted to mention? Ronald, did you see anything else you wanted to throw out there this past week?
No, I think we're talking about it next week. I'm trying to think of
our TV stuff. Yeah, we're gonna do like a
TV stuff
download kind of next week and catch up on a bunch of titles there. But any other movies that either of you have seen?
I did see Mea Culpa, the Tyler Perry, the huge Tyler Perry like scandal, starring Destiny's Child's Kelly Rowland and Travante from Mike Tyson miniseries Westworld. He was in Westworld. One of the most muscular men I've ever seen in my life.
Trevante Rhodes.
Trevante Rhodes, but yeah,
midnight. Gotta say midnight.
Oh yeah. I wanted. I don't know why.
Moonlight.
I don't know why I didn't say Moonlight first, but for some, I feel like.
Why didn't you say midnight?
Why did I say?
It's almost midnight. No,
Moonlight midnight. Moonlight midnight.
Moonlight. That's what we're really talking about.
Moonlight.
Ooh, Moonlight. A Moonlight.
Oh, Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Dune Part 1. Moon.
Someone needs to do that. That's what we need AI for, right? Is just to say Moon Knight equals Moonlight, and then have Oscar Isaac digitally inserted with too many fingers in the background of Moonlight.
Sorry, Mea Culpa. You were saying?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so. Keke Palmer said this thing on her Instagram that got me thinking, man. Just watch the movie. Don't worry about what anybody else is saying about it. Which kind of reminds me, man, I want to see that action movie you were talking about. What's the one with
Yeah, Land of Bad.
Land of Bad. I'm probably gonna watch that this weekend.
With Russell
But
Crowe.
it just reminds me of
looks
that
crazy.
whole. That's why I like you guys, because like it's just like, sure, we got our bouginess, but a movie's a movie sometimes. And I think I relaxed a little bit. I was just like, let me fire up this Tyler Perry movie. I had so much fun watching it.
Oh, good.
It's a ridiculous movie. I mean, it has the twists and turns. I don't even want to give away. It has a twist that's like, if it were executed right, like
I love
could
that.
have been.
Now that qualification is always there with the Tyler Perry thing. If it were executed right, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. It could have been like Jordan Peele, like Wes Craven level. Like it could have been that kind of twist. And it just, it is what it is. Like he writes the stuff himself. He does the production himself. It's a weird movie, but I see why it's number one on Netflix. Like it is such a strange.
Oh, it's a Netflix movie.
It's a Netflix movie.
I didn't realize that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I guess he has a deal with Netflix. He's going to do a couple movies with them. On his, it's crazy. Like a Tyler Perry movie will be on his property. A Marvel movie will be on his. It's just one of those things. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
You're
you
fine
dropped
now.
for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
You dropped out for 1 second.
Yes. I said I was muted for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, I love
the AI algorithm. Something inside the Zoom app heard us talking about Marvel and said,
it's like,
"Enough."
It said, "Mute him."
Mute him.
Yep.
It's like Moon Knight was bad enough, but now you're just talking about Marvel. No, I do think that is a like we do it all on this show, Ronald. We like the nerdy stuff. We like the bougie stuff. We like the action stuff. We like so yeah. You gotta feed all of your inner movie nerds with different things. I didn't expect a Tyler Perry rec at the end of the show, but
yeah. It's
did
a
this one
strange
have
movie.
AI backgrounds in it? Because I know that's what he made the press this last week saying that like he halted there's like a $900 million expansion of his studio or something that he halted because now he feels like he can do more with AI for like location.
Right.
He said, if the script says Colorado, I can just type that in. It's text. And I was thinking like, what an for a studio head to say that shit. Okay, but for a director to say that shit is like nuts to me. Especially when he got so much good press for what he was doing for the community for so I don't know. Maybe he's still going to create a lot of jobs, but I found that to be one of those weird stories.
There's a lot of context for it too, because like he has just for anybody listening, Tyler Perry in Atlanta has a huge, like huge, massive space for production, right?
Yeah.
But the particular AI that he's talking about is when the uncanny valley thing kind of went away. Like I think that's Sora, the AI that he saw, is the first time that you could show someone footage. I mean, they've done this in front of a couple people, just showing them footage, and they weren't able to tell that it was if it were AI or real life. And that is what people were very afraid of. And I think it shook Tyler Perry. Well, was Tyler Perry in his Medea outfit when he saw this?
Maybe he was in character.
Or was he in
Computer
his regular?
made this? Oh my god!
He did call it Cerna, so maybe he was in character as Medea.
It's like, AI, more like, hey, I ain't paying them to make my movies no more.
I like that impression.
It was more. It was a little bit of Gene Shalit mixed in there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was the Gene Shalit style.
I'm okay with that.
I always go to Gene Shalit when I'm doing impersonations of other people. I gotta funnel it through him.
What's that sitcom? Mama's House.
Mama's House, Mama's Family.
You're talking about Mama's Family. That
Vicki Lawrence.
Yes, the character you just did could have definitely been on that show. Just very like.
Probably was. I watched a lot of that growing up.
Through the door. It was a great show. Mama's Family.
I heard someone say it's really funny that Vicki Lawrence did like a breakout role like that made her completely uncastable as her own age.
Yeah.
Like what a weird thing.
Nuts.
It's like, oh, you're a big star. We're going to build this sitcom around you looking 30 years older than you are,
Yeah.
and that's what people are going to think of when they see you. You know,
What a strange thing.
yeah, gotta love the
Yeah.
80s.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'll say the
wow.
80s. All right, so Mea Culpa's on Netflix if you want to check that out.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, I haven't watched. I really don't think I've watched any other movies this week. Some TV, like we said, but we'll get to that next week.
yeah.
Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to past episodes or to jump over to whatever podcast platform you prefer to listen to your shows on and subscribe. If you subscribe already, leave a rating, leave a review, do something. Let us know you're listening. And we also have the video option for you if you prefer to watch your podcasts. YouTube.com/movieschmoviepod. You can go there, subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications about when new episodes come out. And yeah, any of those options would be really great if you could do any of those. We'd really appreciate it. Again, next week we'll be back to talk about Ronald's required viewing of Pusher, 1996, I think. You know, Nicholas Winding Refn, you know, they're your boy.
Young Mads Mikkelsen. He wasn't even Mads yet. He was just like mildly vexed Mikkelsen.
And yeah, then we're gonna just
Irritated
kind of we're gonna go through some TV that we've watched in general. Like we've kind of, you know, peppered some conversation of some shows we've been watching off and on. We've been on different tracks in terms of who's watched what, but we're gonna try to sync up and get maybe 2 or 3 that we've all kind of either completed or caught up on together, and maybe just some other recommendations that we've watched on our own that maybe we could help each other find some new stuff, and hopefully you too. Otherwise, you both good? Everything okay? All right, cool. Well, as always, you've made our day. Thanks a lot.